Picture this. It is October 1994. You're standing in the dimly lit, acoustically treated halls of Rumbo Recorders in Los Angeles.
Oh, I can picture it. The air probably smells like stale coffee, cigarette smoke, and just the heavy weight of thousands of hours of exhausted studio work.
Exactly. And a legendary lead guitarist walks into the control room. He's there to listen to the final mix of his freshly recorded guitar solo.
Right, a solo he really poured his heart into, paying homage to one of the greatest rock songs ever written.
Yeah, and he's expecting to hear that signature Marshall-saturated tone. You know, that incredibly thick, warm, overdriven sound you only get when you push a classic tube amplifier to its absolute physical limit.
Which is his trademark, right? But when the engineer hits playback, something is terribly, terribly wrong. The stereo mix essentially sounds like a completely different recording session.
Yeah, instead of his massive singular lead lines anchoring the track, he hears these unfamiliar, tiny answer solos. And for anyone unfamiliar with that term, an answer solo is essentially a secondary guitar phrase recorded specifically to echo, respond to, or, well, in this case, completely step all over the main melody.
Yeah, just plastered right on top of his masterpiece.
Right. And in that moment, he realizes with a sinking feeling that the band's lead singer had sneaked his childhood friend into the studio at midnight to record over his work.
It's brutal. It's the literal documented sound of one of the world's biggest rock bands tearing itself apart from the inside out.
Welcome to Deep Cuts and Deep Thinking.
It really is a stunning historical snapshot of a dynasty just collapsing under its own weight.
It totally is. And, you know, we have a massive stack of sources to comb through today. We've got expert research reports, deep musicological analyses, and some really fascinating historical band retrospectives.
There's so much to cover here.
There really is. Our mission in this deep dive is to explore Guns N' Roses' 1994 cover of the Rolling Stones' Sympathy for the Devil. We are going to unpack how a single 7-minute soundtrack commission managed to capture the exact moment the band's classic lineup disintegrated.
It's just wild to think about.
Okay, let's unpack this, because to fully grasp how this specific cover broke a band, we need to understand the sheer cultural weight of the original song they were trying to replicate.
Absolutely. You cannot separate the 1994 collapse from the 1968 foundation. The Rolling Stones recorded the original Sympathy for the Devil at Olympic Sound Studios in London back in June 1968. It was the opening track for their album Beggar's Banquet.
Right.
And the lyrical genesis of the song was deeply rooted in the literary atmosphere of the late 60s. Mick Jagger was drawing heavily from the French poet Charles Baudelaire, but the primary catalyst was actually Mikhail Bulgakov's novel, The Master and Margarita.
I love that connection. The premise of that book is so fascinating. The devil literally visits Moscow to expose the sheer hypocrisy of a supposedly secular modern society. It turns the concept of evil into this very urbane observational force.
Yeah, Marianne Faithfull actually gave that novel to Jagger as a gift, and it completely shaped the song's narrative structure. Jagger wrote from a first-person perspective, framing the devil not as some, monster with pitchforks, but as an immortal, wealthy, historical witness to humanity's worst atrocities.
It's brilliant. But they had some trouble in the studio at first, didn't they?
Oh, definitely. Musically, they faced a major hurdle. Early demos show the Stones trying to play it as a traditional, plodding folk rock song, and it wasn't working.
It was too stiff.
Exactly. Keith Richards eventually suggested they abandon the standard rock format entirely and build an acoustic samba groove.
Which was revolutionary for a British rock band at the time. When you listen to that original track, you have this 6-minute and 18-second runtime sitting at a hypnotic 115 beats per minute.
It just rolls along.
It really does. Samba's all about lightness and movement. You have Rocky Dijon playing these primitive driving rhythms on the congas and Nicky Hopkins playing those bright classical Baroque piano chords. It feels nimble, like a sports car hugging tight corners.
I like that analogy, and the lightness creates a brilliant cognitive dissonance with the sheer darkness of the lyrics. They also stripped away heavy amplification.
Right, there's not a lot of heavy distortion.
No, not at all. The menacing atmosphere doesn't come from distorted guitars. It comes from those organic backing vocals. The spooky chants Marianne Faithfull and Anita Pallenberg layered in the background.
Just the woo-woos. It's so iconic. And honestly, the seductive nature of that original track is exactly what brings us to the 1994 commission.
It's a movie connection.
Exactly. In the mid-90s, the producers of the film Interview with the Vampire, which was this massive gothic blockbuster starring Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt, they needed a closing credits song.
Right.
So Tom Zutaut, an executive at Geffen Records, brokered a deal for Guns N' Roses to cover Sympathy for the Devil. And when you think about it, the thematic overlap is just undeniable.
Oh, for sure.
Lestat, Tom Cruise's character, embraces his predatory, vampiric nature with this theatrical, narcissistic ecstasy. I mean, he's a refined master of evil who charms his victims before destroying them, which is the exact same energy as the devil in the Rolling Stones song.
It's a perfect match on paper. And Axl Rose certainly saw that parallel. He loved the project and deeply identified with the theatrical, dangerous aesthetic of the film.
But Slash felt differently.
Completely differently. Slash, the lead guitarist, was a massive fan of Anne Rice's original novel. And when he was shown an early preview of the movie, he absolutely hated the cinematic adaptation.
Wow, really?
Yeah, he felt it betrayed the source material. So before they even plug into their amplifiers, the two primary creative forces in the band are fundamentally divided on the artistic merit of the project.
That's such a bad starting point. And look, we have to look at the physical and psychological condition of the band at this moment too, because they weren't just arguing over a movie script.
No, they were falling apart.
They were. By late October 1994, Guns N' Roses was functionally running on fumes. They had just come off the Use Your Illusion tour, which was a grueling 192-date world tour stretching over 2.5 years.
Just unimaginable exhaustion.
Human bodies are not meant to sustain that level of sleep deprivation, unnatural adrenaline spikes, and sheer financial pressure. I mean, the band's bass player, Duff McKagan, was literally recovering from a burst pancreas.
Which is terrifying.
Right. Imagine being Duff here. Your internal organs have physically failed due to excessive alcohol consumption. You survive a near-death experience, you make a massive lifestyle change, you walk back into the studio to work, and you are immediately met with an incredibly toxic, fractured environment.
Yeah, the physical toll was devastating, but the psychological isolation within Rumbo Recorders is what truly broke them. There was zero collaboration happening.
None.
Usually, a rock band hashes out an arrangement in a room together, feeling out the tempo and the groove. Here, Axl chose to work entirely alone. He would arrive at the studio at midnight, long after the rest of the band had recorded their rhythm tracks and gone home for the night.
Oh, so they weren't even in the same room.
Exactly. He refused to track with the others. He issued his creative instructions through intermediaries and engineers.
That sounds like a nightmare. But it gets even more isolated than that because the sources point out that rhythm guitarist Gilby Clarke wasn't even informed that the recording session was taking place.
Yeah, he was completely in the dark.
He was out on the road touring his solo material. He found out after the fact that his band had recorded one of his favorite Rolling Stones songs without him.
That had to hurt.
That was the moment he realized he'd been silently ousted. But the absolute breaking point was what happened during those midnight sessions. Axl unilaterally decided to bring in his childhood friend, Paul Huge Tobias, to replace Clarke.
And he didn't just bring Tobias in to play rhythm guitar in the background. He brought him in to actively record over the lead work the rest of the band had already painstakingly built.
Okay, wait, I have to push back on the psychology of this decision.
Yeah.
It completely defies logic.
How so?
You have a frontman who has conquered the entire globe, sold tens of millions of records, and built a musical empire with this specific group of musicians. Why deliberately sabotage your own proven dynamic by sneaking an outsider into the studio to overwrite your lead guitarist? It feels incredibly self-destructive. What is the actual logic here?
What's fascinating here is how extreme isolation warps your reality. To an outside observer, it looks like blatant sabotage, absolutely.
Right.
But from Axl's perspective, he felt he was staging a rescue mission for the song. He felt the rest of the band was entirely uncooperative and musically stagnant. Yeah, he believed they weren't participating in the creative process the way he demanded, and he felt deeply alienated within his own band. To him, he desperately needed an ally in that studio, someone who understood his vision and would execute his exact directions without any pushback or ego. Tobias represented a safe harbor.
I mean, I guess I see that logic, but the execution of that vision was a profound personal insult to Slash.
Oh, without a doubt.
Slash had already laid down his rhythm tracks and his traditional expressive blues rock lead guitar solo. To walk in and hear Tobias's brighter, tiny answer solos, literally stepping on his phrases without any prior consultation, was the ultimate deal breaker.
It was the final straw. Slash went on the record saying this track is the literal sound of a band breaking up, and he has stated he refuses to ever listen to the recording again.
I don't blame him. And when you have the core members of a band tracking in total isolation, actively fighting a cold war through the mixing desk, the production itself becomes a casualty.
Yes. The musical arrangement became just as crowded, conflicted, and hostile as their internal politics.
They took that 1968 track, which we compared to a nimble sports car earlier, and mutated it into a bloated, heavy metal armored tank.
That is a great way to describe it.
The contrast in the sonic architecture is just staggering. The 1994 cover was mixed by Bill Price, and it is an absolute masterclass in audio compression.
It's so dense.
Right, and compression is a studio technique where the quietest sounds are artificially made louder and the loudest sounds are squashed down. The result is this flat, exhausting wall of volume where everything is screaming for your attention at once, and the runtime swells to 7 minutes and 35 seconds.
It's a long haul, and the rhythmic foundation completely shifts as well. The Stones relied on Charlie Watts's slinky, understated samba feel and those prominent congas.
Yeah, all that nuance.
Gone. In 1994, drummer Matt Sorum replaces that nuance with rigid, forceful, straight-ahead rock drumming. The organic shakers and hand drums are virtually eliminated.
And Duff McKagan's bass playing abandons the original syncopated groove entirely. Syncopation is when you play between the beats to give a song a danceable sway.
Right, it gives it that pocket.
Exactly. Instead, Duff uses an incredibly aggressive, pick-driven bass tone that just drives straight down the line like a hammer. Then you have keyboardist Dizzy Reed and Axl layering this sleazy, lounge-style piano underneath a massive, suffocating wall of heavy guitars.
It's so intense, and the vocal booth was just as claustrophobic. If you isolate Mick Jagger's original performance, it is a conversational, sardonic croon. He is practically whispering these historical atrocities into your ear with a wink.
It's very intimate.
Very. Axl Rose goes in the exact opposite direction. His vocal interpretation is overwhelmingly theatrical. He utilizes multi-octave screeches, heavy vibrato, and full-throated wails.
That's a lot.
And those backing vocals, which were originally those spooky organic chants from Marianne Faithfull and Anita Pallenberg, they're replaced by incredibly loud, heavily compressed woo tracks that are pushed forcefully to the front of the stereo mix.
It is pure sensory overload, but the sources reveal a detail about this wall of sound that completely changes the context of the recording.
The guest star.
Yes. Amidst all this internal warfare with Axl and Slash fighting over guitar parts and Paul Tobias layering his answer solos, they actually brought in a massive guest star. Queen's Brian May was invited into the studio.
It remains one of the most intriguing and ultimately chaotic footnotes in hard rock history.
Truly. Brian May was brought in to layer his own lead guitar parts on top of the madness. May is famous for using his signature red special guitar played through a classic Vox AC30 amplifier.
A very iconic setup.
And that specific combination produces a tone that is incredibly distinctive. It is lyrical, clean, and almost orchestral. Think of the soaring solos in Queen songs. Now, consider the physics of sound. Guitars primarily occupy the mid-range frequencies of human hearing.
So they're all clashing.
Exactly. In this final mix, you have Brian May's grand melodic lines actively fighting against Slash's thick, overdriven blues rock leads, while Paul Tobias is still in there doing his tinny answer solos. They're all fighting for the exact same sonic real estate.
It's a mess.
It creates this muddy, multi-layered outro where the listener's ear simply cannot distinguish who is playing what.
If we pull back and connect this to the broader landscape of the music industry at the time, this overstuffed arrangement perfectly mirrors the excess of the mid-90s hard rock era.
Oh, totally.
The genre had become incredibly grandiose. It was obsessed with massive production budgets and endless sonic layering. The fact that Guns N' Roses took a brilliant song about the seductive simplicity of evil and turned it into an expensive, chaotic, multi-guitar stadium anthem is the ultimate reflection of where they were as a corporate entity.
They were just carrying too much.
Yeah, carrying so much emotional baggage, so much personnel, and so much unspoken resentment that the music physically could not breathe anymore.
So after isolating themselves in the studio, betraying each other with secret overdubs at midnight, and engineering this massive, fatiguing wall of sound, the band had to release it to the world. The single officially dropped in December 1994.
And the commercial reception was a massive reality check.
It really was. For a band that had completely dominated global culture and MTV for the better part of a decade, the numbers were a significant step down.
Right. It hit number 9 on the UK singles chart, which is respectable, but not dominant.
Not for them, anyway.
No.
Oh.
And in the US, it only reached number 55 on the Billboard Hot 100. It vanished from the cultural conversation almost immediately, completely lacking the staying power of their earlier anthems.
And the critics absolutely eviscerated the track. Spin magazine eventually did a retrospective ranking of the entire Guns N' Roses catalog. They ranked this cover number 79 out of 79.
Dead last.
Dead last. They called the arrangement sluggish and specifically criticized Axl's vocal performance as a miserable dramatic interpretation.
Ouch.
Yeah. Complex magazine went even further, listing it among the 50 worst cover songs of all time, citing a total lack of conviction and a bloated energy.
While the critical panning was harsh, the internal domino effect triggered by these sessions was catastrophic. The singular soundtrack commission was a catalyst for the total collapse of their dynasty.
The breaking point.
Exactly. Slash officially quit the band in 1996, stating he was completely unable to reconcile the creative differences and the deep betrayal he felt over the Paul Tobias overdubs.
And the bleeding didn't stop there. In 1997, drummer Matt Sorum was fired. And the trigger for his termination was a massive argument with Axl, specifically regarding Paul Tobias.
The tension was just too high.
Right. Sorum vocalized his strong opposition to Tobias being in the band. Tobias made a disparaging remark about Slash, and Sorum was instantly out.
Duff McKagan formally resigned shortly after that argument. The classic lineup was completely gone.
It's wild how fast it unraveled.
Yeah, and Axl Rose retained total legal and artistic control of the band's name, which led directly into the notoriously expensive $13 million Chinese democracy era.
Oh boy.
That subsequent period was defined by over a decade of endless delays, a constantly rotating cast of studio musicians, and that exact same uncompromising isolation Axl first exhibited during the 1994 sessions.
So what does this all mean? Why does a messy recording session from 3 decades ago matter to you today? I think this saga serves as a profound masterclass in the absolute fragility of collaboration.
That's a really good point.
It shows you exactly how a lack of direct communication, a culture of extreme isolation, and a reliance on unilateral decision-making can destroy even the most successful, lucrative partnerships on Earth.
Yeah, it applies to anything, really.
Exactly. It doesn't matter if you're playing lead guitar in a stadium rock band, building a tech startup, or organizing a local community project. The moment you stop talking directly to your team, the moment you start sneaking around in the dark to enforce your own vision, because you've convinced yourself that everyone else is the problem, that is the exact moment you destroy the magic that made you successful in the first place.
It's a hard lesson. And it also leaves a fascinating legacy for the song itself. The emotional trauma of this specific recording session never actually healed, despite the passage of time.
And that is perhaps the ultimate irony of this entire story. Guns N' Roses launched their massive, not in this lifetime reunion tour in 2016. Slash and Axl finally made peace. They got back on stage together, and they have been touring stadiums continuously all the way into 2026.
An amazing comeback.
It is. But despite playing hundreds of multi-hour shows across the globe, they have never performed their version of Sympathy for the Devil live. Not a single time.
Wow.
It is entirely blacklisted from their setlist.
It functions as a monument to their own destruction. It is a piece of music completely frozen in 1994 that they refuse to revisit or acknowledge on stage.
It really makes you evaluate the psychological weight of the material you choose to engage with. The original Rolling Stones lyric is entirely about the devil acting as a silent, instigating witness to human self-destruction.
Right, just observing.
Exactly. The devil in the song doesn't force anyone to pull a trigger or start a war. He simply introduces the friction, sits back, and watches humanity tear itself to pieces.
It's a dark premise.
And by actively choosing to cover this exact song during their most vulnerable moment, it is as if Guns N' Roses invited that exact same destructive, chaotic energy into their own studio. They made the track a literal witness to their own demise.
That is heavy.
Which leaves you with something fascinating to ponder as you go about your day.
Yeah.
What other pieces of art have acted as a self-fulfilling prophecy for the artists who created them?
That's a great question.
If you found this episode interesting, please like and subscribe.